So this year's Toronto International Film Festival is in full swing, but it's extra exciting this year because it's the 50th anniversary. So today we're looking at TIFF's half-a-century legacy, from its past wins to its present challenges, and what the future might hold for Canada's biggest film festival. I'm Amil Niazi, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. I've got Barry Hertz, Sarah-Tai Black, and Jackson Weaver with me. Barry and Jackson just had to take off their TIFF lanyards. That's how deep in the festival they are. Yeah. They got a lot to say about TIFF as it enters its 50th year. Welcome back to Commotion.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So Barry, for anyone who's not familiar with TIFF's humble beginnings, especially if they're, they know about the Brangelina era where they have the red carpets and the big wattage stars, take us back to how this festival first came to be.
Okay, so the year is 1976. There's no such thing as streaming or anything like that. Most people go to a movie theater, and there was three Toronto guys, Dusty Cole, Bill Marshall, Hank Vanderkolk, who decided to basically do something for the city and kind of kickstart the Canadian film industry, which was pretty sleepy at that point, and decided to start up a festival of festivals, as they called it. It kind of started when Dusty, who was a Toronto lawyer, happened to be in the Cannes Film Festival during a vacation with his wife across Europe, stumbled into the Carlton Hotel there, and made it his kind of perch for the next decade, where he just hobnobbed and schmoozed. And he was a larger-than-life character, often wearing a cowboy hat. And he made the connections, and Bill Marshall was kind of in the mayor's office. Hank was his business partner, and they cobbled together the resources and networks and got it going.
I love that. I love when you get to hear about the humble beginnings of something that's, blown up to be this huge internationally recognized thing. Sarah-Tai, part of what makes TIFF so, special is the way that it centers the movie fan, the everyday movie fan in its ethos. It's always about, at the end of the day, the bums in the seats. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and why it's so focused on that part of the festival life?
I think that TIFF definitely presents itself to be a festival that brings fans in on that movie experience. It definitely markets itself as closing that gap between big Hollywood celebrities and their big movies and their audiences. A friend of mine just showed me a picture of her from 10 years ago where she's 5 feet from Oprah and her face is every single emotion. And it's precious. So funny. Yeah. It's the precious years. And it's moments like that that really, I think, encapsulate what TIFF is trying to get at in terms of centering audiences. We're holy shit, it's Oprah. And of course they have Festival Street. A few years back, Nickelback performed, which is, if that's not for the people, that is. Shout out to Nickelback. And of course, unlike a lot of really big festivals with the same kind of prestige, there is the People's Choice Award, obviously, which is at least supposed to be a collective response to film that centers us as everyday audience members rather than a jury of critics or filmmakers or otherwise.
I mean, Jackson, they literally call it the People's Festival, right?
Yeah, I mean, it went from the Festival of Festivals is the official name, and the unofficial and even still kind of official name became the People's Festival because, as Barry was saying, it was supposed to be the place where films from other festivals came to the regular populace. And as a place where just about word of mouth connecting with one another, it became about the festival where you get to see Oprah walking down the street, or also, most importantly, the main thing is you're supposed to be able to go see Lighthouse or Holdovers, whatever, for $30. It's supposed to be accessible to people. And the way that then works is with the People's Choice Award, which goes to the movie that normal people care about. And, that's something that we've really seen highlighted in the past few years because COVID rolled around, social distancing was in place, and some festivals suffered and other ones thrived, ones that weren't necessarily about normal people walking around seeing one another. Cannes Venice did very well comparatively. TIFF really suffered 2020. We had the hybrid festival. Things were bad again. We had, strikes, so stars aren't there. We had Queen dying on like day one year where like nobody was focusing on the festival. Ostensibly, things are supposed to be back to normal last year, but all the buzzy films aren't coming out. Not as many people are coming out. So TIFF has really been on the ropes, and we've seen exactly what it's supposed to be by what it lost, which was the people, the interaction. And yeah, if you want to be the people's festival, if you want to go to a festival for the people, that's what Toronto's really supposed to be.
I love that. And one of the things that people really look for when they go to TIFF are those big premieres. You get to see the films before they are seen anywhere else. And one of the first really big premieres that TIFF snagged was this one.
My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Stop saying that! Oh! Hello! My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die! Now! Offer me money. Yes. Offer me everything I ask for. Anything you want. I want my father back, you son of a bitch.
My name is Inigo Montoya. I mean, come on.
I appreciate that extended clip. I felt like I was watching it.
Yeah, we're just going to show the whole movie
let's do that.
after this conversation. Okay, so that, if you didn't know, is a moment from the 1987 film The Princess Bride, starring a young Robin Wright along with Corey Ells and, of course, Mandy Patinkin. Barry, what made this premiere such a big moment, such a big get for TIFF's global reputation?
Well, I think like a lot of kind of big premieres that have come to the festival, it was kind of like an accidental hit. The studio wasn't necessarily high on it. They didn't really quite know what they had. Fools. Time and again. So this was actually programmed that year in 87 as the closing night film of the festival, which I think everybody in this table can agree is not the most prestigious slot and often goes toward films that quickly evaporate from the public consciousness. But this one was a hit. It had all those fantastical elements. Rob Reiner was like at his peak as a director. And yeah, it was an immediate smash, and the festival treated it as such. They built a huge special seat for Andre the Giant to accommodate his 7-foot frame. And the cast has also never forgotten it because back during COVID and the start of the pandemic, when TIFF did their virtual screening series as kind of a way to keep audiences engaged, their very first screening was of The Princess Bride. And Mandy Patinkin and Rob Reiner and the cast, and Carrie Ellis, they all participated in a kind of virtual watch-along. So there is very much a shared history there of success.
That's so sweet. Andre the Giant had his own special seat. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Jackson, it's also got a pretty impressive track record as far as Oscar nominations, right?
I mean, I loved how Barry brought up how like Princess Bride was an accidental hit, and that's often what happens at this festival. Like I was talking earlier about how this festival is the people's festival, and that's juxtaposed with something like Cannes, which is, people can go to it, but their top prize, the Palme d'Or, is judged by filmmakers, critics, people on the industry, and they'll go in a jury room and they'll deliberate and say this is, the most respectable movie. But the TIFF Festival Award is about what people actually care about. And I have my laptop here because I have all my notes. We're doing a story on this coming out later this week. It has become such a successful awards prognosticator from 2008 through to 2023. Every single People's Choice winner, except for one, 2011's Where Do We Go Now, has gone on to be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those ended up winning. If you go to the runners-up, there's 3 of those ended up winning. But in years like 2019, the top winner ends up getting Jojo Rabbit ends up getting a Best Picture nomination. The first runner-up, Marriage Story, gets a Best Picture nomination. And the second runner-up, Parasite, ends up winning the Best Picture. And it's something that TIFF is supposed to be able to do for both audiences but for studios, is tell you this is the movie that people care about. I don't care what the critics say. I don't care about the industry insiders say. This is a movie that sometimes, and there's a huge, really great example of this I think we're talking about a little bit later, their studio is going to be like, no one's going to care about this. This is too niche. This is too weird. And then the audiences are like, no, this is the movie that we care about. This is the movie that you studios should put your money into when you're trying to market it, when you're trying to figure out what should win. Or the corollary can happen where something like Amelia Perez is beloved by critics because they think it's so nice and so fun. And then what happened in last year is it came to TIFF and people are like, what are you talking about? This is the worst thing I have ever seen. And then the conversation shifts. So TIFF is supposed to tell everybody what real people care about.
I don't know if you can hear it at home, but Jackson's so excited. He's going to break the desk. We're going to have to build a new desk from scratch after this. No, I love the passion. I love the passion, Jackson. Sarah-Tai, as a film critic, what is one of your all-time faves as far as like premieres at TIFF?
I think in terms of something that showcases what TIFF says it does, would be Moonlight, which premiered in the platform section in 2016. There haven't been a lot of impactful moments for me like that at TIFF that stand out for me personally. I think it's just such a good example of what that platform program does, which is highlight these early and mid-career filmmakers who are often on the cusp of like making it huge, but also in the way where they're not just becoming big names, but they're becoming like auteurist big names.
Jackson, I'm afraid to go back to you because I don't know what you're going to do, but what's a standout for you?
Standout film at TIFF was probably when I went to see The Holdovers and it premiered there. And it's like, I think it was the North American premiere, but it was a movie that I didn't have any expectations for. I don't think many in the audience had much expectations for. It was outside of the realm of the director's like normal purview, and it just went gangbusters. It was my favorite movie. I walked out of the theater, walked home, wrote a review, headline, Holdovers is the best movie of the year, and I think I was right. And it was just such an amazing experience, and it's kind of those kind of things that you discover in the festival programming is why I love TIFF.
I mean, this guy's passionate. You got to give him that, right?
I'm sitting a little at a distance because I don't want to get injured.
You're almost in the splash zone.
I'm in the splash. You will get wet.
Barry, we mentioned The Princess Bride as the first really big year for TIFF. But when it comes to the moment when TIFF became a dominant player in the global festival world, you picked the year when this movie premiered. Okay, me, Sarah-Tai, and Jackson are all nodding our heads. Barry, unmoved by Jai Ho, probably one of the best songs that ever came out of a movie, but that's fine, Barry.
Can I just say, I used to be a dancer, and that year at every single dance competition, everybody was doing that song.
They were Jai Hoing.
It was infuriating.
Barry, what made 2008 such a special year for TIFF?
I mean, so yeah, this is the Slumdog Millionaire year. And also kind of keeping in with our thesis, this was an accidental hit. So Cameron Bailey and Piers Handling, who was then the chief executive of the film festival, went to go see this in London, and the studio had zero confidence in it. There was actually a plan for them to release it directly to home video at the time and just bypass theaters altogether. But they thought it was really great, and they thought it was a roller coaster of emotion and everything that audiences then came to feel it was. And this film then switched studio hands, and they kept on it, and they were like, premiere it here, premiere it in TIFF, premiere it with the Toronto audience. And they did, and then it became that instant sensation thing that just came out of nowhere, won the audiences over, took the People's Choice Award, went on to Oscar glory, pushed Dev Patel right into the spotlight, gave Danny Boyle kind of a second life in his career. And it proved to the rest of the film industry that, hey, you can break films here. You can make careers here if you play it right.
Yeah, I mean, that movie in particular does seem like one of those ones that was like championed by the people. The audience loved it and saw it and then just carried it into Oscar success. I'm Amil Niazi, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. You're listening to Commotion. We are talking about TIFF, its 50th anniversary, with film critics Barry Hertz, Sarah-Tai Black, and Jackson Weaver. So, Barry, we've touched on the impact TIFF has had on the global stage, but what has it done for Toronto and the Canadian film industry? I mean, you talked about why it was started in the first place, was to kind of champion this fledgling industry. So what has it actually achieved?
I mean, it is I think all roads in the Canadian film industry and to an extent the Canadian television industry, which are so intertwined, lead to TIFF. If you make a film in Canada, TIFF is your kind of North Star. You want it to be there. You want it to get the platform there. And we've seen over the decades, there have been so many Toronto Canadian filmmakers' careers have been born at TIFF. The whole new wave of the 80s and 90s, Don McKellar, Patricia Rozema, Zacharias Canuck, the list goes on until the new generation with your Matt Johnsons and your Chandler Levacks and everybody like that. It is such a critical part of the ecosystem. And I'm not saying that the films wouldn't have happened if TIFF wasn't around, but they're so intertwined at this point that you can't really even separate them.
Right. Sarah-Tai, you've obviously you're a film critic, but you've also worked in the film festival circuit for a minute. What do you think of what Barry's saying?
I think in terms of Canadian films, like as someone who's worked at TIFF, at Hot Docs, at like smaller festivals, like right now I work at Regent Park Film Festival. The thing that's kind of always a horn in my side with TIFF and Canadian filmmakers is the festival's relationship to capital and to prestige. They have this huge emphasis on maintaining premiere status for the films that they want to show from Canadian directors, and that really minimizes the other audiences that those films can have, especially if it's a feature that's slated to premiere at TIFF. Odds are it's going to bypass screening at other smaller local film festivals to maintain that premiere status, to maintain their entry into TIFF. And I think that also works in tandem with some of the mechanics of Canadian distribution that are happening in the background, where the films that are made for Canadian audiences are not actually getting to all of the audiences for whom those films are made. TIFF is a really financially inaccessible festival for many people. I wouldn't be going if I didn't have a press or industry pass every year. So kind of keeping Canadian films locked into TIFF by these standards that aren't actually important and don't actually forward that goal of spreading Canadian film across our country. It's just something that bothers me always. It's always a sad time when I can't program a film for another festival because it's at TIFF and then they only want TIFF, things like that.
Well, Barry, Sarah-Tai's raised some interesting issues. Another one of those issues is how it's sort of been losing some of that premiere status. The films are going to Venice first, or they're going to Cannes, or they're bypassing TIFF altogether. You've just written a piece for the Globe and Mail looking at some of the challenges that TIFF is facing as it enters its 50th year. Another big controversy, we just sort of heard from Cameron Bailey about The Road Between Us, the ultimate rescue, about the October 7th attack on Israel by Hamas. Bailey just is sort of explaining the decision to initially not have it screen, then reverse that decision, have it screen, and then this back and forth. So obviously, TIFF is plagued by challenges as well at the moment. So, let's talk a little bit about some of those.
Yeah, kind of where to begin, I guess. But, there are, as it hits the 50 mark, it needs to start thinking about what the next 50 look like, or TIFty, as the episode cruelly reminds us. But yeah, what is its placing on the international kind of film festival landscape? Yeah. Where does it sit? In terms of getting those high prestige, high pedigree kind of titles that, the more informed audiences are going to crave and desire, and by this point in TIFF's evolution, expect the festival to have. And so if they do not have that kind of pull, if they're not kind of have that reputation as this is the place where you bring your highest stuff, rather than this is the place where you can kind of bring the festival leftovers, that's going to hurt it in the long run, I feel. Unless they want to harken back to those festival early days where it's just the place where everything from around the world came so that Toronto audiences could access it and so it could get that kind of North American platform. But I have the sense that that is not what they want to do, nor is it what kind of they need to do to grow. Because there is also this sense of just kind of exponentially getting bigger all the time. Next year, they're introducing an official content market using about $23 million in federal funds to help get that going. That's another, just adding a story upon your mansion. And how big can you get before too big is too big? It becomes inaccessible and becomes overwhelming. It becomes an all-you-can-watch buffet of middling steam tray cinema when it should be a finely curated Michelin star feast, to abuse a metaphor.
Jackson, what do you think of what Barry's saying in terms of some of these challenges TIFF's facing?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that they have wanted to go away from the Festival of Festivals moniker from almost the get-go. This is a place now that it wants to show how international Toronto is, and they want to have those big, buzzy world premieres. And those tend to be actually what audiences gravitate more towards. If you look at the People's Choice again, 6 of the last 10, including last year's Life of Chuck, were world premieres at Toronto. And I think No Man's Land premiered both at Venice and Toronto, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was a pandemic era weird
thing,
exception.
But the world premieres are what get people excited to be there. And also, as we mentioned, seeing Oprah in person is what gets people excited to be there. And the reason that studios and then therefore their actors actually want to show up at TIFF is because, hey, it serves a purpose. It's early on in the fall. It's this awards prognosticator, and there are enough other world premieres here to make us have some cultural cachet by showing up. Whether or not they can keep, competing with other festivals when their whole thing is we're accessible. And I mean, I said earlier on, ostensibly that's why it's the People's Festival. But I think, as Sarah-Tai alluded to, on the ground, that's not really what's happening anymore. You get resellers and you get cordoned off streets that don't necessarily have all the access you want. You get all these like very, very busy thoroughfares, and you don't get the ability for the average person to see The Rock, to go to the Smashing Machine, to do anything other than spend $500, $600 for a ticket. And as that gets more difficult, then it becomes, okay, TIFF is as inaccessible as Cannes, but it's also not the same respectability as Cannes. So why does it exist? Why do festivals want to go there? And I mean, if you look at last year's People's Choice winner, Life of Chuck, it broke the streak. It didn't get nominated because it was a world premiere that didn't have distribution. It might win this year. Who's to say? So TIFF is in a really odd kind of crossroads, and they need to decide what is the essence of this festival and how do we make it both serve the people and be desirable for studios.
Okay, well, I mean, that kind of leads us to our final question. And I'm going to make it tricky because I want just 30 seconds from each of you. I'll start with you, Sarah-Tai. What do you want to see TIFF do to build on this legacy and move forward?
Mine's more pragmatic. I would really like to see improved accessibility, not just financially, but for audience members with disabilities. For anyone with a disability like myself, you know that it's not just a matter of looking up the access supports that they list on their website or that the venues do. You know that when you show up and you actually ask for them, they're like, huh? And it becomes this domino effect of panicked able-bodied people being like, someone actually wants it. And it ends up with audience members and critics unable to see movies, unable to get paid for that coverage. It makes their voices not heard in that space because they literally can't answer the film. Can't see the film, like my friend last week who literally could not enter because they were blocking the ramp in Scotiabank. It's a perpetual frustration for all TIFF goers, and I think that they really need to improve.
Jackson.
Quickly, just accessibility, as I was mentioning, for like price-wise, people able to get in, and kind of out of left field, I want more animated movies. There's Arco that's really this year that's really good, but more focus on that.
And Barry, last word to you. What do you want to see TIFF do to really build on this legacy of TIFFD?
I think I'm gonna hop on the accessibility issue as well. But one thing that they actually can do is go back to Ticketmaster and stop the resale.
Oh gosh,
the resale market for tickets is absurd, and it is almost criminal how expensive these resale tickets can go, and that all goes to Ticketmaster. It doesn't go to TIFF. And TIFF needs to re-examine, go back hard on their contract with Ticketmaster and fix that because that is ridiculous.
Like, what are we talking about? Hundreds?
We're talking $500 for it.
Apparently, Steve, $1,000 apparently for the world premiere this year.
Wow. Well, a lot to think about for TIFF and its legacy. We got to leave it there, but thank you all so much for having this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Barry Hertz is the film and deputy arts editor at the Globe and Mail. Sarah-Tai Black is a freelance film critic whose work shows up in the Globe and Mail and here on Commotion. And Jackson Weaver is a senior writer at CBC Entertainment in Toronto. The Toronto Film Festival is currently in full swing, and you can catch more of our ongoing coverage on Commotion's bonus daily TIFF in 12 podcast. I'm Amil Niazi, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening.